What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Professional Athlete Podcast. If this is your first time joining us, I'm your host, Ken Gunter, and if you've listened to the show before, welcome back. I'm really pumped about the episode that we have today. It features one of my really good friends from college, Kareem Maddox. I wanted to have Kareem on because in the basketball world, he's accomplished some pretty incredible things over the last few years, but what's been so mind-blowing to me is his story along the way. It's just such an inspiring story. And there was a lot of things that I didn't even know. So lock in, because this is going to be a really great episode. Let me tell you a little bit about Kareem's rap sheet, because it's absurd. Number one, he's a former co-captain of the Princeton Basketball team. And in 2011, he helped lead the team to an Ivy League championship and a historic run to the NCAA tournament where they lost in a nail biter to Kentucky. So if you were paying attention around that time, no doubt you saw the buzzer beater shot against Harvard to propel them into the tournament. He was also named the Defensive Player of the Year in the Ivy League. He was a unanimous All-League selection. He then went on to play professional basketball in Europe. He spent time playing in Poland, Netherlands, and England. More recently, he is a member of one of the top professional 3-on-3 basketball teams in the world. And a lot of you probably didn't realize that there was professional 3-on-3 basketball. But there very much is. And these guys are within the top 5. He's played everywhere from Eastern Europe to China. And it seems like, just based on talking to him, that he's played everywhere in between. He currently is a member of Team USA, and within the last year, he has won a national championship. He was elected to go play in the FIBA World Cup and represent Team USA, and for the first time, he helped the USA win gold, which is incredible. You can think about this in the same terms as like the World Cup for soccer or football, depending on where you're listening. Later that year, as if that wasn't enough, he went and won a gold medal at the Pan American Games, again, an elected representative for Team USA. And really exciting, 3-on-3 for the next Olympics, which was originally scheduled to be in 2020. And now with all the craziness is getting postponed to 2021. He was elected as a qualifying member, only one of 4 people to represent Team USA in their qualifying bid. So he's not a lock to be in the Olympics yet, but I mean, he's damn near close. So right now, he and these guys are kind of on hold. That's an update post-show being recorded. But again, I mean, this guy's about to be in the Olympics. It's incredible. So if that isn't enough, what's absolutely ridiculous is that he's doing all of this with a full-time job. I can't tell you enough how interesting the story is of how he pulls all this off. So lock in. This is going to be a really inspiring episode. I personally, even though I know Kareem, was not aware of a lot of the things that kind of took place and kind of how he got to where he is today. There's been a lot of twists and turns, a lot of moments where he had to take a gamble on himself. So I think, regardless of why you're coming to listen to the show, I think you're going to be able to take some things away from this that are going to hopefully help you take a risk on yourself. With that, if you've reached out recently and let us know what you think of the show, we greatly appreciate it. We're really working hard to put together a high quality show. So thank you for letting us know. And as always, if you're enjoying the show, please leave us a rating or a review. It certainly helps attract new listeners. And, we've been really fortunate in that we've had an incredible quality of guests to date. And I'm so excited to announce some of the folks that are going to come on the show here in the next few weeks. But those things really help as well. So if you're enjoying the show, leave a rating. We appreciate it. Also, stick around for Run It By My Wife after the interview. I'm going to catch up with Sonia. Going to talk about our key takeaways. And without further ado, let's welcome Kareem Maddox to the show.
I gotta get up. I got too much to do. Yeah, I gotta get going. I gotta talk to you. It's time to start the show.
So you're out in LA, right?
Yeah, back in LA. Moved back around February 1st. So, it's been a couple months now. Just getting back into the swing, man. You gotta figure out what's cool again. It's been so long since I've been here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So that's kind of like the one of the first things that I would love to talk about. And I guess for people who don't know, it'd probably be worth diving into your athletic background a bit. So you and I know each other from Princeton, right?
Right.
But you've been doing quite a bit since then that I think people would be interested to learn a little bit about. So, at Princeton, right? You were Defensive Player of the Year?
Yeah, Ivy League Defensive Player of the Year.
Defensive Player of the Year, Sixth Man of the Year?
No, but I did win that award for like the Princeton team. Yeah, I guess so. But it was weird. I think they gave me the basically the equivalent of like the MVP and the Sixth Man award. So then they split it amongst separate, like a few players, which it was weird. I think they were just like, just get these. Let's finish this. Let's get this season over with.
Yeah. No, I got you. So you had an amazing collegiate career. Took the team, won the Ivy League championship, took them to the NCAA tournament. And we were split seconds away from beating Kentucky. Yeah, I don't know if people remember that game, but I was there.
I remember it for everyone.
I know you do. So how was that, man? How was that playing in the tournament?
Dude, playing in the tournament was a really cool experience. I mean, it's funny because we started this Princeton career as freshmen, and we won like 6 games our freshman year, and then like maybe 10 our sophomore year. And so,
right,
the buildup and the anticipation was really there to make the tournament because we had never made it. And so we get in on this crazy buzzer beater shot. I think, you were at every game, so you probably remember it better than I do. And then, getting there was awesome. It's just like, you see, I noticed several things jump out at me about the tournament. One is just like the NCAA and like the machine that it is in like putting on this massive event. And then you see like how into it, we were playing Kentucky and we saw how well Kentucky fans traveled. And, you were in the stadium again, like it was, little, you guys in the little corner, and then everyone else was like Kentucky. Right. So
Kentucky blue. Yep.
But then like the crowd kind of started shifting, for us when we started doing well because of those other teams that were in the, West Virginia and the UCLA fans that were in there.
Yeah.
So I remember that. And then, I think the biggest thing was like, I remember too late that like, or we all realized like collectively, since that was our first time in the tournament, that's why I think NCAA tournament experience is really important for, your mid-major teams. And you see Ivy League teams winning, first round, second round games in the tournament now. But when we got on the court, we realized that the gap in talent is like, nowhere near as large as everyone thinks it is. Like once we were out there, we're just like, okay, like, they have a couple guys who are probably league, but other than that, like, our team is a better team. We're like more experienced. And we should win this game, actually. And if we had known that coming into the game, I don't even think it would have been as close as it was. I think we would have won by a lot more. But, revisionist history, I guess.
No. And I mean, so that's something that I've always thought about. And you see it a lot, especially with college football, too. In those early season games, it's like that talent gap for the guys who are playing. It's not as big as it may initially appear, right? And to your point, like there's definitely like those studs on Kentucky who are going to go in the first round, and like those guys are as legit as it gets. But when you start talking about like the actual discrepancy between like how talented you guys were, it became apparent. You know what I mean? Like I would argue, watching you play, you looked more athletic than most of the guys on the court, and that included the studs of Kentucky. Like you were jumping over people, shooting turnaround games. I was like, let's get Kareem in the league.
Yeah, dude. I know that movement. I think that was right before things started to go viral, but that might have been a viral opportunity there.
I know, missed opportunity. How was that experience actually? Like the actual like playing in the game itself.
Dude, the game was great. I mean, the game was, I think we started off down a little. We came out like a little bit shell shocked. Like, we weren't used to playing in these like massive arenas and in front of like all these people. I don't know. I think the game we might have started off like down 9 or something. But then just guys started to make shots. Like, Doug Davis was like, all right, well, I'm just going to do what I always do. And like, cross, jump shot, like make it.
Right.
And then we're like, oh, okay. Like that was easy. And then we just started going and we realized like, all right, let's just do what we've been doing all season, which is like play as a team and like stick to our principles and run our stuff and just trust whatever coach was saying. Like this, we were playing against like, Brandon Knight and Deron Lamb, like Terrence Jones, Josh Harrelson, like all these guys. And our coach was like, look, like Brandon Knight, when he goes to his right hand, he's an NBA player. When he goes to his left hand, like he wouldn't even make this team. And so we're like, all right. And so we forced him left all game. And the one play that he got right, that he got to his right hand and drove to the basket, ended up being the one basket that he made.
Right.
And it was the winning basket.
You guys basically shut him down. And actually, you were on Knight most of the game, weren't you?
Yeah. And I don't take credit for shutting him down because literally he couldn't go to his left hand. Like he couldn't, we forced him left or just sat on his right hand and he just wouldn't do it. He would just pass it or he would, And then we watched the next game and I think they played West Virginia next or maybe UCLA. And they were just like, we'll do it. Like, let him go right all day. And he was just like killing and looked like an NBA player. And we're just like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So that, I think it's definitely like a team. It was our principles that really, kept us in that game and, gave us a chance at the end there.
Yeah. So thinking about the game, like, were you able to kind of appreciate like the spectacle while you're in the moment or, after those kind of the first initial moments, was it just like any other game for you guys? Because, and here's why I asked, as a bystander at home, right? I mean, like the reason March Madness is as incredible of an event as it is because of those like Cinderella story moments. And like
totally.
you guys were right there and taking one of the better teams in the country down to the wire, like I've just kind of always been curious, like what's it like actually being in the moment there?
Yeah. Being in the game is just, it's totally like just any other game after a certain point. Like once you realize that, like, all right, we can, Princeton is famous for backdoors, right? Like we run a couple backdoors and we get them. We're just throwing the same passes we've been throwing for the last 4 years. And like guys are making the same layups that they've been making for the last 4 years. And, after that point, we're just like, all right, this is a regular game. But then we got to halftime and, maybe down 5 or something, down 4 or 5. And we're looking around and we're just like, all right, like we stuck to the game plan. Like, let's go out and play the second half of this game. Like, just like we're going to play it. Everything about it was as expected. Like the refs were like extremely fair. Like, I think, we had no complaints about the refs. Right. The only thing that was weird was like timeouts were longer, but I think mentally, it felt after a certain point, it was just like, we started to realize like the way we've been winning is the same way that we would, we'll have a chance to win this game. And we realized that, at some point, like, 5-6 minutes into the game. Right.
And it's funny hearing you say that back. I feel like there's a lot of parallels just to life in general. Right. Like often like and I just had a podcast about this, but the anticipation of the moment is kind of so much bigger. And then once you kind of actually get there, you realize like it's not as daunting as it might have first seemed. And if you can just kind of like rely on the things that got you there, you know what I mean? You can typically be pretty successful.
No, totally. Yeah. I mean, it's all like, everyone looks way better on TV and you just see those guys on TV all the time and, you don't see yourself. So totally. I mean, that was actually a big lesson, like just from a mental standpoint is like, literally until you play someone, you step on the same floor and play against them in anything. Like you don't like, like if you're confident in the work that you've put in, like until you actually step on the floor with them, you don't know, you can't say if they're better. Like all the, literally like all the talk, like all the hype, like whatever anyone else says, like other people's opinion, especially I feel like a lot of the times, like these basketball, when it comes to college basketball, for instance, like the people analyzing it, like haven't touched the ball or like haven't touched the ball in years. So, and I don't know, that's just filtered through. Like, I'm sure, you know, I remember watching you do the D10 like a few years ago, absolute monster. And we're all like looking at that guy who wins it from San Antonio or whatever, comes up every year. Yeah. And we're just like, Kenny's better than that guy. Like, everyone's hyping this guy, you know. Obviously, you know, it's the D10, and probably not a lot of people know about that outside of like, you know, greater New York area, but we're just like, Kenny's better than this guy. Like, you know, I don't know his name. He seems like a nice guy, but, you know, I'm sure you have the same, you know what I'm talking about.
No, I do. And, you know, I even think back to playing college football. You know what it was? Where it really, I started to feel that way, it was like in high school. Because like high school recruiting and the way that like the media picks up certain athletes or certain teams, I mean, you think that you're walking into a buzzsaw. You know what I mean? Right. And then like, it's like, man, this guy's such a stud. He's a 5-star. He's on another level. And then you get there and you're like, oh, wait a second. Like, I can actually compete with this guy. And on top of that, like, I actually think I can take advantage of him in some ways. You know what I mean? Exactly. So it's like, it's like you really can't let all those talking heads build it up. And so actually on that point, like, what did that game, and I don't mean to like, overemphasize how important that was for you. Totally. So stop me if it wasn't, but you know, like what did that game, and for people who don't know, you had like an amazing performance along with a lot of the other guys on that team. You guys balled out. But what did that game in particular do for your confidence?
Oh yeah, dude. I think it was really important. I mean, again, like, you know, playing mid-major basketball, you just don't get to match up against the Kentuckys or the Dukes like all that often. And when you do, it's typically like at a time when you're, you know, at a complete disadvantage. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're at, you're going down to Duke to play like Cameron Indoor, and like refs are, you know, letting people step on people's heads. Like literally, like this happened when we went down to Cameron. And so like, you know,
insane.
No, it was the craziest. Anyway. So yeah, but no, totally. I mean, I think that's why I say I wish I had realized that we'd been able to play in a tournament game, like, you know, freshman, sophomore, junior year, so that we get this realization a lot earlier. But like, it's just basketball, and like everyone's just human, right? So and we know, like, we knew how much work we had put in, and like I knew all the hours I spent, I knew all the shots that I'd made, I knew all the moves that I had practiced, and so. But you never just got to test it against, like, you know, the people that they say, you know, quote unquote, they say. And mind you, that team that we played did go to the Final Four that year. But, you know, it was funny because it did a lot for my confidence, like, you know, because I went overseas and played afterwards. And, you know, obviously I'm still playing 3x3 basketball now. But it was like I ended my college career with this realization. I was like, oh, like, I could be as good, and in most cases probably better than these guys. Like, college ball's over. Like, that's it. Like, that was your last game. Like, so,
hell of a time to come to that realization.
Yeah. I was on the plane back. It was just like, damn, that's funny.
Yeah.
So, and it wasn't like a fluke either. You know what I mean? Like, literally everything we planned to do, we did. We're like, all right, this game needs to be in the 60s. We need to play like defense. We need to force this guy right. This guy can't, you know, and we just got to keep this guy off the boards. And like, we did most of those things, but just like not enough. Right. So, that's where I was at.
You know, it's funny. And when I think about that kind of experience that you had, one of the things that I found in my life, and now like I actually make a point to seek it out. And I think a lot of people who are successful and, you know, whatever their own pursuits are, is you've got to put yourself in situations that you're uncomfortable with to kind of find out what you're really capable of. You know, because it's comfortable to stay in an area where like, you know, that you can do well. And I'll give you an example, like podcasting, right? Like I had that itch and I was like, man, you know, I think I could do this. And I think it would be really interesting, and there's a ton of like fear and anxiety that comes up with that. You're like, oh, well, what if it doesn't work out? Or what if I suck? You know, what if it goes nowhere? But
totally.
Until you kind of like throw yourself in deeper water, you know, you can't really find out what you're capable of. And I think about this a lot too, growing up, I was fortunate that my parents always like put me athletically in tougher situations, like if it was playing up a grade or playing on some travel team where we could face better competition by going out of state or doing whatever it was. And it was a lot of those experiences that kind of built that confidence to be like, no, I can do this,
Yeah.
And
Totally.
I think there's probably a lot of folks who would be surprised what they were capable of if they were just willing to put themselves in situations where they were a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think you're 100% right. And, from a kid's perspective, I'm sure that's why you became like a multi-sport, athlete, and you were able to do a lot of different things, even though football was your calling card, right?
Yeah, it was. And you know what? I love basketball. And I just played for the first time. Actually, when we were on the phone the other night, I played for the first time in like an old men's league. And dude, I had a blast, but I was sore as hell. Because my body just doesn't move that way anymore. So that, again, trying to do something that I haven't done in a while, it's a lot of fun.
Basketball will do
for
that.
You, right? Yeah. So we referenced that you went to play on in Europe. Could you talk a little about your experience playing overseas?
Yeah, man. It's funny. It's exactly what you were talking about in terms of putting yourself into situations you're uncomfortable with, because it felt like that a lot of times. So I went overseas and I played in Holland, or the Netherlands, as they want to brand themselves now. England, like Newcastle, the UK, like on the Northeast, and in Poland after a hiatus, which I can go into if you want. But so those were all places that were different. Not so different because they speak English in at least in the Netherlands and the UK. But I loved it, man. It was just like a year at a time. You're like a basketball mercenary. You got a new team, a new coach, and you're there to just get it done. And then you're kind of plopped into a place. They give you an apartment and a car, and they're like, you live here now, and go figure it out. So,
with regard to being a mercenary, I think a lot of people don't understand this, but a lot of these teams have like a cap on the number of American players they can have, right?
Yeah, totally. In Holland, it was like a gentleman's agreement between the teams that you were supposed to have like 3 or so. Okay. The UK, there was a limit, but Poland had a weird rule where it was like there had to be 2 Polish players on the court at all times.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
So not even just on the roster, but like they would track and make sure there were like Polish guys actually playing at all.
You could have 10 Americans on your roster, but like only 3 could be on the court at any given time, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah. European basketball is like so fascinating to me. And you know what? I think as a kid, I didn't even realize that was really an option. Like, were you aware of that? Or was that something that you just kind of got made aware of, like, as your college career was starting to come to a close?
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, just as I was wrapping up graduation, started, hearing from agents, and, our coaches had played overseas. So we were like vaguely aware, but they didn't talk about it much. They were always focused on the present. So, it literally, until I got over there, I was like, I can't believe they're just about to like pay me to fly over there and like play basketball. So,
and you were pretty successful over there as well. I know you're pretty humble, and you probably I'm gonna have to pull it out of you, but you dominated in a couple of those years, didn't you?
Dude, we had some good seasons, like, for sure. The Netherlands was okay. I love that experience more than anything because we had like 3 rookies on that team, and all good guys, but we were all over there like together trying to figure it out, and we did fine. I did end up getting hurt, and then torn meniscus, and that that's really hard with European basketball, because if you're looking for a deal the next season, coaches are always going to be like, oh well, take a year, get back, like, before we like pay you, so because the budgets, like you said, are limited, and they can only have so many Americans. So anyway, went to England, and was great. Like, probably I think finished second in terms of the MVP race towards the end of the season. But that was great. I mean, I learned a lot from England. I had a lot of freedom. was able to like try things that I had never been able to try, like on the basketball court. And that was great. And we had a great coach, this guy, Fabulous Flournoy. His name is Fab. And there's a Times article about him recently, or I think it was Times or the Journal. And he's on the staff of the Raptors now with Nick Nurse.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And he's great, man. He's great. He has such an amazing story. Like you gotta read this article. I think it was the New York Times.
Okay.
But it's definitely worth a read. Should drop that in the show notes. And then
is he just a character?
Oh man, is he a character? Dude, he is like I love the guy. Like he's really like, I'm so happy that I have like Fab Flournoy in my life. But he's a character, bro. Like there's one time where he's also like the most disciplined person you'll ever meet, and he's like a fanatic about his diet. I mean, he was a player coach. Yeah. And he was like 42 at the time. And like he would do these things to like keep his body right. I mean, there's one time, I think they talk about this in the article, but he did like an all banana diet, and he ate like 40 bananas a day. Like it was crazy. Like just for whatever reason, like he'll read about it and he'll be like, all right. And then he'll just be like, he's just meticulous about his like, body and everything.
Yeah. Willing to experiment on himself a little bit, it sounds like.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, anyway. And then I actually, as you know, I took 3 years off after that year in England.
Right.
And just I went to work for like NPR station, National Public Radio. Mm-hmm. Got put in some work as a journalist and a producer and a host of radio programs, and ended up in Greeley, Colorado doing that, and just woke up one day and was like, you know what, like this is not for me. Not the industry, just the I guess time in my life where I was like, I'm still capable of playing basketball, and like I was kind of in a rush to start this like, get into the real world, like quote unquote. And I felt like that was really important, but that was probably the influence of other people as much as it was, me. So anyway, I woke up one day in Greeley and was like, you know what, it's time to go back and play. I'll see who's gonna actually hire someone after 3 years of not playing.
Right.
And I found a situation and a deal in Poland and went back and had a pretty good season. I think I, averaged.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I think 12 and 8 or something. And in the Polish league is really good. So I was proud of that.
That's awesome. So what did that process look like for you? That when you finally made that decision, like, all right, look, I got something left in the tank here. How did you approach getting back into basketball?
Yeah, so it was crazy, man. So the situation was crazy, but basically, I don't know how much you know about Greeley, Colorado, but it's it's mostly known for this big meat manufacturer. I think it's JBS.
Oh, okay.
And it's not a ton of people. And I was living up there, and I would basically drive to like my job, which was hosting a show, All Things Considered, at like 10ish, and I would see like no one on the road. So I started, going a little early, and there was like this sick gym right next to the radio station. Yeah. So I'd go in, lift. It was like the biggest I ever was, because I was just like lifting for like hours. Because I really had no friends up there. Like I didn't, I was like an hour from Denver, where I did know some people, but so anyway, like lift, and then I would like just play basketball for a long time. Like just, get it, shoot it, like, work on parts of my game. And anyway, that's how I got to like, I was doing it enough that I was like, I can still play. And so then I was like, all right, how do I go about this? Like it's around the beginning of the summer. I can go play in some tournaments down in Vegas with some agents. So a lot of like European agents will hold like kind of like either pickup runs or like actually organized camps down in Vegas. And, a ton of European coaches come over to just for that reason, but also the NBA Summer League's going on around the same time.
Got it.
So they come, and it's also Vegas, and like these European coaches love Vegas. So
right, yeah, lots of reasons to be in Vegas.
So I went down, and I hit up our friend Dan McGrady's, and
Dan McGrady's.
I was like, "Yo, his old agent, because he played in Greece and Italy, and he had a good agent." And he's like, "Yo, put me in touch." I was like, "Put me in touch, and I'll see what kind of camp they're doing." And so they were running like a 1-day camp in Vegas. It was like 3 hours, and I was like, "All right." Like, I feel confident I can play. There's going to be all these European coaches go, because this is a pretty good agency. So there's going to be all these European coaches there. And I was like, I know I'm not in the cardiovascular shape to like actually play. Like, if this was a multi-day camp, I'd be in trouble. If this was like any longer than like, a couple hours, like I'm going to be in trouble.
Right.
I was like, but I can tough out like 3 hours.
Okay.
Because my lungs were not there. So anyway, like right before the workout, do you remember NO Explode?
Oh yeah.
Dude, I hit like maybe like 2 scoops of NO Explode. I was let's go, dude. 3 hours, like I can do this. And bro, I'm telling you, it might have been like the best 3 hours of basketball I've ever played. Like,
really?
I was just out of my mind. So much so that like all the coaches were like, all right, who is that? Like there's coaches from like Lithuania, like good teams and stuff. And, the agent every time had to be like, well, they're like, where did he play last year? Like, how do we not know about him? And he's like, well, he's actually like a radio producer. So anyway, there happened to be one coach there whose team was in Poland.
Okay.
Whose, team was in the 2nd division the year before, but won the division. So it was being promoted to the top league, which is a good league. And so he didn't have like basically a lot of budget. And he was like, all right, well, I can see with my eyes that this guy's good, but like no one else will take him because he hasn't played in 3 years. He's like, but like forget it. Like I can take the risk. Like I don't have the money. Like I can, I don't have to, obviously I wasn't demanding, it wasn't exactly demanding NBA money at that point.
Right.
And so he was like, my agent was like, dude, it's a good league. Like you have a good season there. Who knows where you'll be in the next season. And that was kind of the thinking. I was like, all right, cool. And
right.
Like, you're going to rural, like Southeast Poland. It's about 2 hours from anything cool, and see you when you get back.
Right. So what is the hardest part about playing overseas?
Yeah. Well, for me, I think a lot of guys just don't like being away from home.
Yeah.
For that long, because you're there for like 10 months at a time. But I actually loved it. I mean, so the hardest part for other people, I think, was that. But I love it. Like I use every opportunity. Sometimes coaches would be like, all right, like you're off for 3 days, and I'd be like, later, and just go, drive to like the nearest big city or whatever. I think like initially when you get there, there's always like a learning curve. I had to like, figure out the translations for certain words at the store, like yogurt and like cereal. And so that I could like, go into the store and ask people, like hold up my little sign and be like, where is it? Where's the chicken? So yeah, and then I don't know, I didn't find much of it hard. Like, when you get into February, March, and you just like really want to go home from a long season, that's tough. But that's also when you're about to be free. So I usually like, so I don't know. I don't know. I honestly didn't find anything hard about it except for like a little bit of impatience towards the end of the season. I kind of loved it. And, I had people visit, and I saw my family enough. I was able to go back for Christmas. And so, yeah, I mean, I would have done it forever. I mean, the hardest part is kind of just actually coming, having gone to like a pretty good school and knowing that there are opportunities out there in the professional, in the, quote unquote real world. Right. That kind of pressure and anxiety actually is probably the hardest part.
Yeah. Like, why is that? I get why, because I feel the same thing. Like, when I was graduating, like I definitely wanted to keep playing football, and my career just didn't. I got injured all the time. And well, number one, like the NFL is incredibly hard to get into, right? So even if everything had gone perfectly, they still might've been like, you know what, we're just not really interested. But like for me, I was like, man, I just spent my whole life trying to be, you know, the best possible athlete I can be. And then like all of a sudden it kind of feels like the door's shut.
Totally.
And then it's like, well, shit, what do I do now? And I remember, you know, especially in the Ivy League, right? You see people start to go into all these high paying jobs really early. It's like finance, or they go to med school, or they want to go to law school. And I was just like, you know, none of those things are of interest to me, but I kind of like felt that external pressure watching everyone around me go to, you know, into those fields. I was like, well, damn, maybe I need to look into finance. Like maybe I should be doing banking. Like, what am I doing? My parents just sent me to Princeton. It's like $60,000 a year. Like, what am I doing with my time? I don't think they wanted me to take a marketing job where I'm getting paid like $35,000 a year, which is true.
In New York.
And which is what I did because I followed what I was interested in. Which fortunately has ended up working out really well because
you're doing great, bud.
Thank you. I appreciate that. No, but it's hard, man. That pressure. And like for you, you know, basketball being something, I hope I'm not assuming too much, but being something that you love, you know, like it's crazy that external pressure could be strong enough to make you like, second guess what you're doing.
Yeah, dude. No, dude. Like, for sure. You know, I would say I definitely like loved playing, always loved playing for sure. But
yeah,
I didn't realize my own potential, I don't think, until that's when I was up in Greeley, you know. So I was like 26 years old. And I was like, you know what? I was never as good as I could have been. And I still have a little bit left in the tank, you know. But I will say, like, going back to Poland for me was the hands down the best decision I ever made. Like, you know, and it on the surface, it looked like just completely the wrong decision. Like, from everyone was like, all right, you just spent 3 years. Like, you know, when I started in public radio, I was like, my goal is to be on air. Mm-hmm. So I worked for 3 years to get there. Like, literally had the on air job for like 2 months at that point. Right. You know, and things were going well there, and I had my network in place for that job, and I actually love that job. Like, I love radio, I love podcasting, I love audio producing, and so for those reasons, it was wrong. You know, my family is always supportive. You know, in the end, like whatever I decide to do, but when I ask for advice, they're like, do not move to Poland.
Don't move to rural Poland. And you've mastered the English language, and now you want to go play basketball in the former Soviet bloc.
And and objectively, like, it was just like, if you think about it, you're like, all right. And not to mention, it was really hard to get a job in radio when I got back from playing the first time, because, you know, I was 2 years out of school. I had like no experience to speak of. Mm-hmm. I started off like volunteering at my local radio station for like almost a year before I got my first like full-time job. And so the whole journey was like there, and then I was like, all right, like, time to blow it up. And so anyway, that year in Poland, like when I landed in Poland, I was like, oh my God, like, you have to live with your decisions. And I learned so much about myself. Like, I became so much more confident in myself, like, in ways that had nothing to do with basketball, just in like in life and decision making, and like trusting myself and my instincts. And because then when I came back, like, I got a better job in New York for this, like, you know, really cool Gimlet, this podcast startup company that I was listening to when I was in public radio, because it had just started. Right. And this is, you know, fresh off the plane from Poland, basically. So I come back, I get like my dream job in New York City. And it was because I was like, you know, I'm going back to play basketball in Poland. And I'm just like, you know, trusting myself on this. And there were times where in Poland, I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm seeing people back home get married, and I'm like, you know, in this like random league next to Ukraine and Slovakia. And I came back, I was just like, oh my God, like, you know, I was able to, I'm so much better at like spending time with myself now, just being, you know, quiet. Like, I don't need a lot of noise around me. Like, I'm just, like, content. Like, I can watch my own thoughts, because I had to like watch them so much to like avoid, going down, like, you know, spiraling at times when I was over there, like stuck on my couch, like, watching something I can't understand.
Right.
So
yeah,
what, man.
I feel like what happens after Poland, because I'm aware of it, but I mean, everything up to this point's already, like, for most people would be, experience of a lifetime. But what you do after, I think, is just simply incredible. But before we jump into that, what was it that kind of made you feel confident in taking that risk on yourself? Because that's really what it was, right? Like, you were kind of going against like conventional wisdom, like, hey, you finally got a good job. You know what I mean? You already, for all intents and purposes, kind of started late, and now you're going to set yourself back another year. Like, exactly. What kind of made you feel confident in taking that risk on yourself?
It was, I think, number one, it was all the jobs I'd been really diligent about, like, figuring out what skills that, and so the 3 years that I spent in public radio, even the time I was volunteering, I was like really diligent about, like, actually, like, working on the skills. Like, I just didn't show up every day, but I would, like, push myself and be like, all right, this is what I'm learning. Like, okay, I could do this, this, and this now. And so, even if I leave, I know I can still do those things because I've like actively, like, learned them, right? Like, I know that I'll be able to keep those and use those whenever I come back to it. So I was confident in that. And then the rest of it, man, was just like kind of gut. Like, and I had always been someone who, I had definitely struggled with self-confidence, like, through college and, even after, I was just, like, trying to find myself. And I think there's, like, a lot of different reasons for that. But, finally it was just like this gut feeling became so overwhelming that I was like, I think the right thing to be doing is to go back and play. Like, it doesn't make any sense logically. And I'm a Sagittarius, so, I'm kind of ruled by logic. Okay. In many ways, but also impulse.
Finally, we get some, what's that called? The horoscopes?
Astrology.
Yes, finally some astrology. I've been waiting for an astrology episode.
This is how you snuck it in. Like, this is what the whole podcast is about.
Yeah. Finally, I can dive into my true passion. Astrology. Okay. Ruled by logic.
Logic and impulse, to some degree. So anyway, it was just like, it ended up being like a gut feeling that I just, like, couldn't shake. And I was like, you know what? I'm really going to regret this if I don't go give this a shot, and just going to have to, like, live with the consequences. But I'm just trusting that, things are going to shake out for the best. And, like, I had no idea how they were going to shake out. But, when I came back, this job, I really mean it, at Gimlet was like a dream job. And it was kind of like, I had the perfect story for it. Like, it's always like the cover letter wrote itself. Yeah. It was like, a show about entrepreneurs and, who are inherently the people taking these, like, big risks to start a company. And it was a podcast, and I was like, oh my God, like, this is literally what I just did. And, like, so, I wrote the thing. I was still looking for deals overseas, but, so anyway, I think it was a combination of, to answer the question, it was a gut feeling, and it was just confidence in the skills that I had already learned, because I had deliberately, like, sought to learn those skills and made sure that I had them in my back pocket, and it wasn't just like something I throw on a resume. Like, I worked here, here, and here. It's like, I can do this, this, and this, right?
So I think that's so important. I actually think about that a lot more now than I used to. But this idea of, like, there's certainly experience, which is important. Right. But, like, the more skills that you can collect, that's what really makes you valuable. Right. And I think, when interviewing for jobs, because in my current job and in past jobs, because I was at a startup, like, I've interviewed a lot of people, and the people who can communicate well what skills they attained from their previous experience and how that's going to be applicable to the job that we're hiring for, like, those people get a real look. And it's not always the people who have the perfect resume that get hired. It's the person who can come in and most convincingly kind of communicate, like, why they're a good fit for the role. And I think, to your point, right, like, yes, you worked for 3 years and then you had, like, a hiatus, but you picked up those skills of interviewing, of doing audio editing, right? And, like, you're not going to forget those. And even if you did, like, it's going to come right back. So
Right.
I think that's super important for people to understand. The other thing that you said too, have you ever heard of like this idea of thin slicing?
No.
And it's kind of this idea of like why you should trust your gut.
Mm.
And I'm not saying that necessarily completely relates perfectly to the decision you made, but it's this idea of your gut is kind of that gut feeling you get. It's actually the result of your body, your brain being able to make all these like split second decisions based on past experiences. Right. So like when you walk by someone and you just get like a bad gut feeling, you know, what's actually happening is your brain's doing all these computations based on past experiences and based on past cues. And they're able to kind of process that information and say like, hey, we've seen this before. And usually, you know, when something kind of gives us this feedback, there's trouble ahead. So I've made a huge effort myself. And I would also agree with you. Like when I do follow my gut, more often than not, it was the right decision. You can often, you know, like, and you didn't, it sounds like, but you very well could have like thought yourself out of a good decision if you sat down and just went like, well, logically, you know, I should do X, Y, Z. And even though my gut is saying this, I should probably stick with what my head says is the right decision.
Right. No. Yeah, I agree. And I think like once you like trust your gut on like one of those big decisions, I mean, I feel like mine was a pretty big decision. I just went with the gut. Like you just get such a confidence in what you're talking about that like, okay, like,
yeah,
you know, I didn't know that there was a, you know, a word for it, but now I'm just like, when I feel it, I'm like, okay, then now, you know, I can decipher between like what's noise and like what's actually, you know, my mind and body telling me to do something.
Yeah. And I feel like that's hugely important. So you mentioned the work that you were doing at Gimlet. So you get this new job, you don't go back overseas. But if I may jump to the next chapter, you get involved in 3-on-3 basketball.
Yeah.
How did that happen? And for people who don't know, explain a little bit about like how big of a movement 3-on-3 basketball has become internationally.
Yeah. So I was in Poland and they announced 3-on-3 is going to be in the Olympics in 2017. And this is something that we'd been moving towards for like as long as 2014 is when I heard about this movement to get basketball in the Olympics, 3-on-3 basketball in the Olympics.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think early on in those years, they were looking at it like, all right, there's volleyball and then there's beach volleyball. Well, at some point they added beach volleyball. It was just a mini version of normal volleyball. So that was kind of the idea. Yeah. And so it happened in 2017. And I had some friends who had happened to win like the USA national championship that summer and went and played for the USA in the World Cup, the FIBA 3x3 World Cup. Right. So
you weren't on that first team?
On the first team in, I think it was 2017. I was not. No.
Oh, okay. So that was like Dan Mavrides, Craig Moore, Damon Huffman, and Zaire Carrington.
Yeah. And okay. I think they lost in the quarterfinals to Serbia. Okay. And I think the year before it was this team of like, it was like Alfonso McKinney, I think like Steph Hanna, like these guys who were like NBA kind of guys.
Caliber guys, yeah.
Yeah. McKinney, I think, is still in the league.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, they lost in the finals to Serbia.
Okay.
So anyway, the World Cup has been going on since like 2012 or 2013. So the sport's been around for that long.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you know, I even remember playing, like we would go out to like in Washington where I grew up, Hoop Fest is a pretty big tournament.
Yeah.
And it's 3-on-3 basketball. But, you know, as I followed you the last few years, and maybe you can touch on this. I mean, the game of 3-on-3 that you guys are playing, like it is, from an outsider's perspective, a mini game of basketball, but it looks like it has a completely different flow, a completely different set of rules. Like it really is like a game into itself.
Yeah, totally unique. I mean, you know, 3x3 now, and so I guess let's just start by saying like, you know, there's a professional pro circuit. The model's a little different than like a league, but it's, the FIBA 3x3, FIBA runs it, and they run all, the World Cup of basketball, 5-on-5, all that stuff. They're the governing body for most leagues around the world, outside of the NBA.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and their idea was to create this like urban sport that's more accessible, especially in places where they can't field a 5-on-5 team. The best example I like to use is like Mongolia has a team, a 3x3 team that performs really well. But have you ever heard of Mongolia on the 5-on-5 like World Cup? No, right? So,
yeah, that's actually shocking.
So, and so in doing that, they made the rules like different and kind of made it its own game, and invented, all these. So there's like a 12-second shot clock. It's continuous play. So there's no like checking up. There's no, you make a bucket. If I score, like I'm immediately on defense because the other team can just catch it, throw it to the 2-point line. We play by 1s and 2s. They can throw it out and clear it. Basically, and they can shoot it right away. So if I like score, I don't really have time to rest. I have to go play defense immediately.
Yeah. And how long are the games?
It's first to 21 points or 10 minutes.
So that's what I was shocked by, because I went, and I don't want to jump ahead too much, so I won't give anything away yet. But when I came to watch you guys, I was shocked at how fast paced it was.
Yeah, that's right.
For those people trying to imagine it at home, I mean, it is nonstop action, which actually makes it a lot of fun. Because who runs? Is it Ice Cube runs like that big 3-on-3?
The big three, yeah.
The big three, yeah. And like what you guys are playing, it's not even that. This is, I mean, it is constant. That ball goes through the net, and that ball gets kicked out, and that guy might put it right back up on the other team. Like it really is instantaneous, and it's a lot. It's really exciting to actually watch.
Yeah, no. Well, thanks, man. Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun to play. And I mean, you have to be in a different kind of shape for it. Like, I'm more tired after a 3x3 game, a 10-minute game than I ever was after a 5-on-5. Cause it's like, all right, 10 minutes of just straight sprinting,
right.
And so, yeah, so I think, it's really well suited for my game. Like,
yeah,
just the way I play, but that's another story. We can go into that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you said something too that I think, because I've tried to explain this to people at work, that my buddies are all trying to make the Olympic team. And the idea that there's a professional 3x3 league, like how does that work? Because you guys, for people who follow you, it seems like every week you're in a different corner of the world.
Yeah, that's definitely what it feels like.
Yeah.
So basically it's kind of like tennis, right? So you know how tennis has these different tournaments. They have Wimbledon, they have the Australian Open, they have the US Open, French Open, like whatever, right? So basically those players show up and they play in those tournaments, and then they move on to the next one. But those tournaments aren't necessarily linked. Like you get points for all of them, but the US Open, I don't think is really related to like the Australian Open. So like those are different organizers. Australia organizes one, US Tennis organizes the other.
Yeah.
So that's basically what FIBA 3x3 is like. So we'll basically play in these like one-off tournaments organized by local organizers could be anywhere. Could be Chengdu, China. We've played in Nanjing, China. We played in Seoul, South Korea. We've played in, there's teams that have played in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. Last year alone, I think we played in like 15 different countries from, the story I tell is like, I took 2 weeks off work last summer, flew to Italy, spent a day in Bologna sightseeing, took a train down to Rimini, which is a beach town in Italy, played in a tournament there. My teammates and I jumped in a car, drove to Lausanne, Switzerland, like through the Swiss Alps, got there, played in another tournament, spent the night in Geneva, got on a plane to Budapest, and then got in a car to drive to Debrecen, Hungary, played in a tournament there, actually did pretty poorly. And so then we just drove right back to Budapest and had a little bit of fun because we got eliminated on the first day. And then we jumped on this flight from Budapest to a place called Inji, South Korea, which is up near the North Korean border. and played in another tournament there. And so it was this like 2-week stretch that was just like, took us everywhere. And at each one of these tournaments, our team kind of changes, but the way we worked out the schedule, I was just going to play in all of these. So I was hopping around, and guys were like flying in and out, and maybe they play in 2 in a row, and then they play in a different. So anyway,
and you guys are doing pretty well most of these tournaments, right? Like,
yeah, for sure. I mean, we were getting to the, semifinals or finals in most of them. And, I don't think we didn't win a tournament until like September of last year. And that was the Los Angeles Masters tournament. But we were great at finishing second. So we finished second. But, the way it works is like you get paid for how you finish. So first place in these lower level tournaments called challengers, you get $15K for the winner, 10 for second place.
Okay.
I think
that's no small amount of money. It's like that. Is that what funds a lot of this travel?
Yeah. So actually, because we worked our way up in 2018 to the 5th best team in the world, FIBA pays for the travel for like the top 8 teams in the world.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Cause I guess they want to have the best talent at all these events, because it probably it strengthens their own brand.
Yeah, totally. And you want to start to develop like a culture and some familiar faces, and so that's why it's really important to finish top in the world, right? So to get your ranking up as high as you can.
Yeah.
So FIBA pays for most of the travel, but then
cool.
like local organizers pay to host the events and give out the prize money.
Got it.
And put everyone up in hotels and things like that. So.
Very cool. Okay. So you're traveling all over the world. Here's the one thing I've always wanted to understand is how the hell are you guys doing this and keeping full-time jobs? Okay. And remember, the whole premise of this show is like, hey, you're a working professional. You still want to be an athlete, but you guys are like taking that to like the nth degree, because not only are you still like all, working like really successful, interesting jobs, right? You're going out and you're competing at an incredibly high level, but you're doing it all over the world. Like, how are you guys pulling that off?
Yeah. I mean, at times just barely.
Okay.
But yeah, so I mean, to give you an example of what a typical like summer would look like would be I'd work like Monday. So I was working at, Gimlet ultimately we got bought by Spotify early last year. And so I'd be working, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then either Wednesday night or Thursday night, depending on where. If I was going to China, you lose a day. So I'd leave Wednesday night. But if I was going to Europe, we'd leave probably like Thursday.
Okay.
Get to wherever we're going on, the next day, because we typically take red eyes. So show up wherever on Friday.
Jeez.
And, get together, maybe have like 10 or 20 minutes to practice as a team, talk over stuff, try to like get over your jet lag. And then Saturday you play 2 games for pool play, and the top 2 teams out of each pool of 3 teams goes on to play the elimination rounds. And so Sunday is quarterfinals, semifinals, finals, 3 games to win the thing. And then Sunday, we'd usually, try to like do a little bit of sightseeing after the tournament, go see, pop around, have a drink, whatever. And then depending on where we were, you'd get on a flight that night or the following morning pretty early. And when you're coming from China, I would leave at like, 8 a.m. China time in like, let's call it Shanghai, and show up in New York at like 9 a.m. on Monday morning.
And would you go to work?
Like, just grab the suitcase and just roll it into work, man.
Did your job know that you were doing this?
Yeah, totally. Because I was
to
taking
that extent.
like,
okay.
Yeah. They, I would typically have to take like Thursday and Friday off, but just the nature of my job, I could work on the plane. So I would just organize it so that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays when I had most of my meetings, I needed to interact with other people. And then I would take like my audio and download it to my computer and just be able to work on it on the computer. Because the other half of my job was like writing the narration for our show and also just cutting the audio and organizing it in a way that makes sense. So I could do all that on the plane. So that's kind of how I worked that out, internally. And then, show up Monday, you'd be like, I think there was like one time in the first year that we were doing this, it was during this crazy stretch where I went like, and it's like work-life balance for sure, but like work, pro ball, life balance. Like if you throw in like everyone wanting to get like married and have bachelor parties, like that just added another element of madness. So there was like 1 week where I like flew to Dublin for a good friend's bachelor party. Like came back, played in a tournament, like 4 days later and whatever, like China. Came back, like had to fly to Morocco for my cousin's wedding the following weekend. And then the following weekend was like tournament in like Europe and then tournament the following weekend. And it was like I was coming back each time. And so this is before we had really figured out.
I would love to have your frequent flyer miles.
Oh, yeah, dude.
The things I could do.
Yeah. No, it was bonkers. So
how did the jet lag affect your play? Because like I'll be honest, I won't take a red eye back from the West Coast to the East Coast anymore because I can barely raise my kids. Like how on earth are you going and playing in like a competitive pro level basketball tournament? You know what I mean? When you're just taking these, not only like one red eye, but it sounds like some weeks, like multiple red eyes over the course of a month through multiple time zones.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you typically hop off the plane and like you don't know where you are and like what time it is. But that's kind of just 3x3, man. It's just like it's a sport where there's so many unknowns because it's played outside and you never know what the conditions are going to be like. We've played in tournaments where it's just windy, like it's just really windy and you're shooting a ball and it's like, you can't shoot, like basically.
Right.
And so I think, something that you've said before on this podcast, but it's just about training for it and just, just taking yourself out of your comfort zone. So, for an example, like I hate running. So I haven't run more than like, I don't know, half a mile since I was like 13. So like 17 years ago or something.
I thought you were going to say like since last year.
Yeah, no, like dude, it's been like almost 2 decades.
Yeah.
And yesterday it was like raining in LA where I am. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to run 4 miles on the beach, barefoot. And I was like, let's just completely throw it all, and so I got on the down to Santa Monica, parked my car and just ran 4 miles like barefoot. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to feel after this, but that's just a way to take myself out of, what I've been doing, which is training for basketball and, doing things that I know are going to be applicable. But that's just how I see 3x3, man. Like you never know what it's going to be like. You never know which refs are going to show up. You never know like how people are going to play after you're off the plane. So like just mixing it up on your body is actually really important, I think, from a training aspect to just be ready for anything, Yeah. There was one time in Moscow where this tournament was basically rained out and you had this whole tournament of like 40 guys or whatever, however many it was, 40, 50 guys from all over the world, literally in a straight line, taking the Moscow like subway to like another venue that was indoors, like 10 miles away. It took like 3 different subway lines. And like, it was in the middle of the tournament. Like we were getting warmed up to play and it was just like raining too much. So we're like, all right, everyone like cool down. Like we're going somewhere else. And like, there's not a bus. It was just like straight subway.
Dude, I love this.
And so like, just you gotta be ready for anything. There's the times that stuff like this has happened, like there's a time in Malaysia we played, there was like a monsoon, like the water was like blowing onto the court and they just like kept it going until, someone like literally made a move, and I'm not joking, like made a move at the top of the key and like slid underneath like the basket. And they were like, all right, we're going to like call this off. We'll finish this game tomorrow. Literally, the game was like 12 to like 9. We were up. And then there's like 4 minutes left. They're like, all right, we just got to finish this tomorrow. We're like, all right, well, then we had to play an extra game the following day. Like, so it's just about, expect the unexpected. And you just kind of get used to it after a while. You're like, all right, ref will come out and be like, all right, well, the sun is like right in your eyes over there. We're like, all right, cool. Perfect. Like, let's do it.
I love it. Yeah. We had on Dr. Greg Carton. He works with the PGA golfers on mental performance. And it's funny. This ties in perfectly to that though. He was saying, look, I don't like to have guys over prepare because if you just train in a box, when you get hit with a curveball, you know what I mean?
Right.
All of that preparation is now, in some ways out the window.
Right.
So for you, is it just like mentally, like you've just become more comfortable dealing with these types of situations?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you need to like have a good attitude. I think that's the thing about.
Is that what it is?
There's not a lot of like Americans on the pro circuit. There's basically 2 teams effectively, like our team and then the team from another team from New York. And then, but there's like 10 Serbian teams. There's like a bunch of teams from Russia, a bunch of teams from all these other places. And I think part of it is because like Americans are used to like playing basketball in controlled environments where it's like, you get out and you get literally thrown into the stands. Like I've literally been like fouled and thrown into the stands by someone.
Really?
And it's just like, I don't even think it got called. And you're just like, wow, like that was, that's illegal in some countries.
Yeah, exactly. You'll end up in the paddy wagon.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, you just have to embrace it. And it's just like, it becomes funny after a while. Like I enjoy telling you these things that have happened, rather than being like, this affected my performance and we didn't play as well because like, the refs were on some BS and this and that. And it's just like, it's not about that. It's about like literally figuring out, it almost becomes a challenge to like, all right, what like messed up situation is going to be thrown at us this time, and like how are we going to get over it and tell people about it after, so it becomes a game, and it's fun, man. Like it's fun, and the people watching, they don't care, they don't know what's going on, like they don't care that you just got off a red eye. Like it's just perform or don't, like, you know what I mean, or try something else.
I love that, man. I feel like if people can, I mean, there's so much to take away, but like just taking that mental approach into everyday life, you would be able to so much better just kind of like ride out these crazy storms, like, because it's so easy to let like unexpected events or challenges kind of like rattle you and throw you off. But if you just almost start to see like those unexpected challenges as like part of the game itself, and almost kind of like embrace it and enjoy it, like I'm sure you would just perform at such a higher level.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for every problem, there's a solution. And sometimes you just got to get creative, like you got to get creative and you have to like embrace it. Right. And that's the only way to move forward. I mean, 3-on-3 is definitely like a great example of it. Yeah. But it's totally applicable,
Yeah. So if we could fast forward, because I know a little bit about how this story goes. You guys start having a lot of success on the world stage, right? Can you talk about your experience with getting to work directly with USA Basketball and some of the success that you guys and members of that team have had?
Yeah, totally. So my first experience playing for USA Basketball was after the national championships last year. What was it, 2019?
Yeah. And the national championships, just again, for those who don't know, that would basically be the equivalent of USA Basketball hosts this tournament to find out who the best 3-on-3 team is among all the people in the US, right?
Basically. Yeah, basically. And it's different in that like it's kind of open. There's different ways to get into it, but like I said, there's not a real like 3x3 like infrastructure here in the States, where it's much more organized in kind of different countries, but we're still new to this in many ways. So USA Basketball. It's kind of like a new department for USA Basketball, a new-ish. Like it's been around for a while, but only recently has it gotten really, really kind of serious. But anyway, so the national championships are held every year, and last year was a World Cup year. So FIBA was hosting the World Cup. It was going to be played in Amsterdam. Okay. And for the first time, USA Basketball decided not to take the winning team from the national championship, but to take a select team of the guys. Yeah. So, I was lucky enough to be chosen for that. It was, myself, Robbie Hummel, Damon Huffman. Those guys are both on my professional team as well. And then a guy named Kenyon Barry. Kenyon plays in the G League for like the Iowa Wolves.
And so he's still playing in the G League because he played at Florida.
Yeah. I think he played at Charleston and then transferred to Florida.
That's right. And then is he a grandson?
He's the son of Rick Barry.
Son of Rick Barry. Okay.
Yeah.
Not a bad lineage to be a part of.
No. Has a couple brothers that are in the league or that were in the league.
Yeah.
So shoots underhanded free throws.
That's awesome.
FIBA loves that. They love it when he does that.
Yeah. And then Robbie was actually in the NBA too,
yeah,
right?
Robbie played 2 seasons for the Timberwolves.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
So you guys, we've got some ballers on the squad.
Yeah. All retired. Well, except for Kenyon.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, that was the team that they were like, all right, first time we've selected a team and we're going to go play in the World Cup. And we won it.
And the selection. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, not to interrupt you. The reason they selected was that because the Olympics coming around the corner, they're starting to look ahead and they're trying to see like, hey, who's the best combination of like US athletes that we can put on the court to kind of like give ourselves the best chance at a gold medal?
Yeah, kind of. I think it's because they had never done a select team before. And they were like, this is getting pretty serious and we haven't had success at the World Cup. I mean, finishing second place at silver medal is not bad in 2015 or 2016.
Yeah.
Then, finishing in the quarterfinals in 2017 or whatever it was, it wasn't bad, but it's not what USA Basketball wants. It's like we want to perform really well. And so it's like, all right, let's try it this way. And so, they did, and it worked. We went to Amsterdam. We won every game pretty decisively.
That's awesome.
And it was just a great experience, man. Like it was the first time the USA had won a World Cup for 3x3.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty important. I think like we needed to make that statement going into an Olympic year. Mm-hmm. And we were able to do that. And then later in the summer, I was selected again for the first ever 3x3 tournament that's going to be played that was played at the Pan American Games, which are kind of like a mini Olympics for the Americas.
Right.
And
so it's like North, Central, South America, all those countries, right, can put teams in.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. And so that was really cool too. I mean, that was awesome because that was, the FIBA 3x3 World Cup is awesome in that it's the highest level international tournament for FIBA, but the Pan American Games was cool because it was every sport, and there was, we walked in the opening ceremony and we were with like Team USA, and our medals, the medals we got, we won gold there. It was a different team. It was, me, Damo Jones, Sheldon Jeter, and John Octius. So guys who are playing overseas or in the G League, and Damo plays on that other 3-on-3 team.
Ah, okay.
From New York, Harlem. And,
so how does that experience get? I mean, I feel like as a kid, like I remember, the dream team, like having that USA Basketball jersey. Now, actually going out and competing on behalf of your country, like what was that experience like?
Oh, dude, it was like it's surreal. Like it's still surreal. It's funny. I tell people I have those 2 medals from last summer, but I actually put them up. Like I put them in a drawer because like there's still the big goal at hand, which is the Olympics. Like that's the one we've been waiting for, and that's the one I really want. So like I don't even want to be content looking at those.
I love that,
those medals. So I'll bust those out after next year. But yeah, man, it's really cool. I mean, actually, I can grab my jersey. It's actually standing.
Oh yeah, dude, let me see it.
All right. So what's crazy about it is that,
dude, that's so awesome. The next question is, where can I buy one?
Dude, I don't know.
Which jersey is that? Is that for Pan Am Games, World Cup, or is that a future jersey?
This was the World Cup.
That's awesome.
But it was the same one. We just got a different pair for the the Pan Ams. But it's funny because it's like we go down into the USA Basketball offices in Colorado Springs, and I mean the other person that wore like a USA Basketball jersey number 9 was Michael Jordan. Like, you know what I mean? So like, wow. And I think every time you play with USA Basketball, you get the same number. So they're consistent about that. So for whatever reason, they gave me 9, and I'm like, dude, every time Jordan played, he wore the same jersey effectively. Like, which is crazy. So yeah, I mean, it all just became like super surreal after a certain point, man. Like I'm just like head down. Like I don't even want to think about it. It's just like, it's time to work. Like there's no time to rest yet. You know, that time will come, but you know, it's not now.
So what is it like training at like an Olympic level? Like you mentioned that you've been out to Colorado a bit. Like what is your approach like right now as you're preparing for the Olympics?
Yeah, no, totally, man. I mean, it's funny. It's like, it's, you know, kind of, we were talking a little bit about how when you play against the highest level, like when we played against Kentucky in the NCAA tournament, that we did a lot of the stuff we'd been doing, and we were successful at it, right? So, you know, everything I've learned in sports from high school to college, all the good coaches I've had, all the good trainers, and you know, whatever, you know, physical therapists, like every bit of knowledge, like just kind of applying it in a way that doesn't make it feel like a big leap. Like it's just like you just have to do all these things, and you have to do them consistently. And when you're training and working out, you just got to do it hard. You got to do it at game speed. And, you know, these are all things that I've done before, but it's always, you know, maybe the stakes have been a little lower, but it's just about being consistent and, like, you know, again, going back to my experience in like Poland and trusting my gut and my instinct. It's also about like listening to my body. You know, I'm 30 now, which is a good age for a basketball player, actually. Like most guys in the league who are in their primes playing really well are around, you know, 28 to 32. So I feel good about that. And it's just like this buildup of knowledge that now I know more things that I, you know, when I was 25, I didn't know. So it feels, you know, it's hard. It's, you know, but the hardest part is, you know, is just consistency. Like it's easy enough to get in a gym and work hard. It's not easy to get in a gym and work hard every single day, right? And find time and, you know, eat right and make time for the things that have to be done. And, you know, sometimes life gets in the way and it's like 10 o'clock and you're like, all right, am I going to get this workout in? And the answer has to be yes. And so that's basically, you know, that's how I'm approaching it at the moment.
Yeah. And it's funny because like, I think for people on the outside, you know, they would imagine like, oh, well, once, and am I correct in saying that as far as USA Basketball is concerned, like you've made the squad right now, the team USA just has to qualify for the Olympics. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, it's, so they've selected the squad for the Olympic qualifying tournament. Okay. And so, that team actually could change, when the Olympics rolls around, theoretically. Got it. But, you know, for us, it's like, all right, we have a mission, and the mission's to like qualify the US, and this is the team. And so let's do it. And whatever happens after that is, you know, TBD, but it's not even worth thinking about, you know? So and I think one of the things we kind of touched on a little bit, but like the game is so unique. It's like, I have to imagine like, one, you can't just drop any basketball player in, and two, like team chemistry is probably incredibly important. So that makes sense. And then
So you said something too that I think is just, it's really important for people to understand, but like, now that you're at this level, and I'm going to call it elite because that's what it is, like, you know, hopefully you're going to go out and compete for an Olympic gold medal. There's no like abrupt change to your approach. It sounds like it's kind of like sticking true, if I'm understanding, to the things that got you there. And in your words, you know, it's just like, are you willing to do that all the time?
Yeah. I think that's a good summary. I mean, there's no need to like start looking for new and, you know, innovative ways to like, you know, to skin a cat or whatever, you know. It's just about like, and I think what I've been lucky to have like really smart coaches and trainers and mentors and things like that. So the principles when you're striving for excellence at any level are more or less the same, right? So now it's about, you know, being lucky, being in the right place at the right time. You know, I consider myself very lucky to be, you know, have a certain skill set and a certain height and like build and things like that. And so a lot of it's luck, but the actual tenets of, you know, being good are the same. They haven't changed since, you know, since Nam.
Well, and like, you know, and I know we're butting up against time here, but did you ever imagine when was it Greeley, Colorado?
Yeah.
Like, did you ever imagine when you were sitting like an hour outside of Denver, you know, working your way up at a radio station, that you would in just a few short years, you know, be contending to be like in the Olympics representing USA?
Yeah. No, man, no. It always felt like a pipe dream, like not only for me, but just for the sport. Like, we're like, all right, when is this going to get done? Like you're not really privy to how the IOC makes decisions about sports to add. And, you know, something about basketball, I was just like, I need to be playing. Like, I just need to be playing. And, at the time it was like, go play in Poland. But I think part of that, like, you know, it's almost like, you know, not to like sound like fanatical or like, not to get into mysticism here, but, you know, that year in Poland was super important because I came back and I was like in shape. I was ready to play. I was in basketball. Like, I had been playing professional basketball. And so that positioned me really well to do 3x3. Yeah. And, so I definitely didn't imagine it, but like there was something pulling me towards basketball, like writ large. And, following that has, you know, put me in the right place at the right time and given me, you know, enough luck to be able to seize it. And so that's what I'm doing, man. You know, it's like, there's going to be nothing worse, than squandering an opportunity like this. So it's just like, you know, here we are, and I can't wait to like reflect on it in like December of this year or something, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I was just having a conversation with Sonia the other day about this. Like, you know, you kind of have to take that leap, because you just never know where it's going to lead, right? Like, if you were short-sighted and was like, hey, you know, I'm going to go to Poland, and like, what are kind of the outcomes of me going to Poland? Like, what I'm going to rise up through the ranks in Poland, you know, like if you just like were that short-sighted with it, you might have talked yourself out of it. But like, to your point, going to Poland was a great opportunity because you learned a lot about yourself, but it put you in a situation where when this new kind of unexpected opportunity presented itself, you were ready for it. You know, that's why I'm such a big believer in like, you got to just put yourself out there. And I don't mean like shameless self-promotion, which I'm trying to get my head around because I want people to listen to the show. But
meanwhile,
yeah, but it's like, you never know what new opportunity or what door is going to open from you taking some action. You know, like if you're at work and you're like just trying to decide like, should I go to this meetup or should I go to this conference event? Like, you might just meet one person at that event who opens a new business opportunity, or you might find that you meet a like-minded individual and it's like, hey, like me, you know, there might be something here around starting a new company. Like, you just never know what opportunities are going to come out of something that might seem not trivial, but not necessarily like a clear major step forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally does, man. And, it's also about surrounding yourself with people who are, and, I'll use this example, like, you're a humble guy, so you probably won't believe me, but, going and watching you compete at the D10 and just learning about the work that you put in, while you have a normal job and a few kids to raise and a family to run. But, talking to Sonia about the workout station you put in your basement or whatever, and like knowing, I'm like, I filed that away at some point where I was like, okay, I know, here's another example in a different form of someone working really hard and making it happen. And so that, somehow, filters into my mind. It's like, all right, like, at a certain point a workout's hard. I'm just like, all right, well, Kenny gets it done. Like, what I mean? Yeah. So it's, so it's like, it's possible. And, I think good influences like that. So, kudos to you, man. And, even getting this podcast started, like you got a lot of other stuff going on. And, as I'm working on my media stuff, I'm like, all right, dude, Kenny got it done. Like he's one of those guys who just gets shit done. And so, well,
thank you.
I think surrounding myself.
I don't believe you, but thank you. No. No, you're right. And, it's funny, like you do need to be surrounded by good people, and it helps when you're surrounded by people who are, it seems doing incredible things, and I definitely count you among those people. One last thing that I want to end on, because right now we are in the midst of a pretty crazy time, and globally, with regards to the coronavirus. And, it seems every day more and more major events are being canceled. And I sure hope with the Olympics still being, a ways off, that's not the case. But, can you talk a little bit about what your mindset is right now as you try and kind of like stick with your training with, again, and maybe after everything we talked about on this podcast, you've already kind of been prepped to deal with uncertainty, but how are you staying focused during this time that, it'd be completely understandable if it was distracting?
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it, man. It's just like, it's kind of like you're training for something that you're not sure when it's going to happen. And so that would be an easy excuse to take a day off here or there. And, I think just the challenge of not doing that for that exact reason, like, I don't lose anything by training extra hard. But, right now it's like our Olympic qualification tournament got postponed indefinitely. And so, USA Basketball, FIBA, they're working on rescheduling it.
And where was that supposed to take place?
It's supposed to be in India. So,
really?
Yeah. To my knowledge, is not necessarily all that affected by the coronavirus, but, travel right now is just hard. So, we're confident that it's going to happen. It's just a matter of where and when. And so, that's left to other people. I think, like you said, like it's easy to find a distraction, but it's just like you gotta train. I mean, for me, I was like, all right, great, more time to improve. Like, more time to get better. Like I can use that time. So again, it's like don't squander it by like being like, oh, like I don't know if it's gonna, like whatever. It's just like, all right, sweet. There's more time to like improve and put my best foot forward when it does happen.
I love that.
So yeah, but other than that, I mean, it's just a crazy time, man. Like it's just a crazy time.
Yeah. No, and I think it sounds like what I'm hearing from you is I always say silver linings, and I'm usually being a jackass when I say it to someone, but you seem to be able to find like the positivity in anything, even in like getting thrown into the stands, probably in like Eastern Europe, in with, I imagine, a pretty hostile environment. Like seeing that as like a challenge that like you enjoy overcoming,
Yeah, for sure.
And it seems too like you're kind of embodying that mindset of like just focus on what you can control, and not waste energy on everything else that's kind of going on around you, Yeah. Would you say is that a fair assessment? Is that true?
I think that's true. And I think like the thing I would add is being able to observe your own thoughts. I mean, there's a few books I've read just about on this topic, but what is this? The untethered soul is a good one, but it's like, you are not your thoughts. Right. And so many times like you'll have these like negative thoughts going through your head. And, I'll have the same thing, and what I found is that a lot of times my mind will just produce excuses. I'll be like, this is why this isn't going right for me, or this is, and like I start to observe that, and then, I can decide that like I'm not an excuse maker. So like these thoughts aren't me. Like they're just like, what I've kind of been programmed to like, find ways to deflect and take the easy way out. And like I can just watch that and be like, all right, that's not me. It's not me anymore. So and I think from that, like just the default becomes like there's a lot of stuff you can't control in the world, like whether in sports or whether in life, wherever it is. And like if you can't control it, like you can't let it affect the way you approach, your business. So I think the default, it comes out as like positivity, but it's really just like, knowing that everyone's doing their best, and no one's out to get me. So.
Oh, dude, that's great, man. Well, good. I think your story is going to be really inspiring for people just on a number of levels. And I think people are really going to kind of enjoy hearing about a lot of the things that you've persevered through. And then, I mean, now, in some ways it's like where you've ended up at this point in your life is just, it's remarkable. So for people who want to be able to follow along, how can they kind of keep up with what you're doing with USA Basketball and as you prepare for the Olympics? And as far as stuff that you're doing from your own media perspective, is there anything to announce yet?
Yeah, man. No, just follow me on the gram, and all the news will drop there.
Awesome. And what's your handle?
It's at Kareem Maddox.
Awesome.
And so that's Kareem, and then Maddox, Maddox.
Cool.
For sure. And yeah, man, I think like I think there's a couple articles and news clips I can send you, and cool. If you want to add those to the show notes, just be a more more background. But
love it. Yeah, man, we'll take it all. Well, good. Well, Kareem, man, best of luck. We're all excited, and we know if and when you get the chance, if this virus doesn't take us all down, you're going to bring home the gold. So we're looking forward to it.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me. It's an honor, dude.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mommy, you better go ask Mommy, Daddy.
Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
To your own attic.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, happy you could be here.
Me too.
So how are you holding up, babe, during Corona?
I'm good. It's honestly, other than not being able to go to the grocery store, it's not too bad.
Yeah, I know. I feel
if the weather was nicer, it would be ideal.
Because we don't do anything anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Aside from like the kids not having school, for us out here, coming off paternity leave, it's like not much different than what we've been doing.
Yeah.
Although we are missing out on some trips, not seeing family.
True.
But
that's true.
Important to stay safe right now. So
Cannon missed his baptism.
Yeah, that's right. We don't talk religion on this podcast.
Oh, okay.
Holy cow. But yes, he did. But we'll get that figured out. What'd you think of the show?
It was great.
I know.
He's inspirational, really.
Right? And I don't know if he thinks of himself in that way.
But that makes him even more so, and he definitely doesn't.
Yeah, because he's as humble as they come.
Yeah.
And he is the last person to like be self-promoting.
Yeah.
In any way. But like the stuff that he's doing, and frankly, the stuff that he's doing with a lot of other guys that we know really well, Dan, Craig, Z.
Yeah.
The stuff they're doing is just like incredible.
It's so cool.
So I wanted to have Kareem on the podcast for obvious reasons. And we anyone who just listened probably already knows what those are. But I just find myself constantly talking to like coworkers and acquaintances being like, you got to hear what my buddies are doing. Like they're traveling all over the world while working full-time jobs. That was like number one why I wanted to have them. I just like wanted to like have him explain how they're pulling this off.
Yeah. He's a professional athlete in all senses of the phrase.
Yeah. Yeah. Nicely done. Wow. Tip of the hat. Yes, literally professional. Still a working professional. He's actually playing professional 3-on-3, and then he is literally at an Olympic level competing and training. It's amazing. What sucks is since that had been recorded, and for good reason though, the Olympics have been moved to 2021. You're aware of that.
Yeah.
We've talked about that.
Yes, I've read the news.
Well, I don't know what you're digging into. I never know what you're doing over there. But so there's some uncertainty right now. My hope is that for Kareem and those guys, it's just one more year of training and preparation. But
yeah,
for these like Olympic athletes and anyone really who's had their life just completely upended by this coronavirus, like where am I even going with this? I just hope that it's a minor setback, but I can't imagine all the effort, all the time that they've put into training and then just to have it abruptly canceled.
Yeah. Well, like you said, I hope it's just one more year they get to hone their skills.
Just hone those skills and come on my podcast.
Yeah.
So should we get into the takeaways?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
So these ones are, again, a little bit more broad, but this these are more like inspirational, like what I took away from talking to Kareem.
Yeah.
Number one of the reasons I thought his story was so incredible, trust your instincts, right? Mm-hmm. Like there were multiple times throughout like his life up until this point where he could have just done the safe thing. He could have just continued on the path he was on because that probably objectively seemed like the more logical choice. But because he was willing to like take a risk on himself and trust his instincts, whether it was leaving the radio job that he had in Denver when he'd just gotten promoted to hosting his own radio show to go back and play professional basketball. Like most people would say, like, you already did that. Like you kind of got a good thing going. Like you should probably just stick with that.
Yeah.
But had he not done that, like likely it never would have opened up all of these other new opportunities. Right?
For sure.
Did you feel that way?
Yeah. Yeah. That's like an uncommon characteristic though, being able to do something like that.
Yeah. I think back.
It helps to be single.
Yeah, it does. Kareem has no kids, people. So what he's doing is not that impressive. Okay.
Well, no, being able to make that kind of decision, but having the confidence in yourself to make that kind of leap is also so impressive.
Yeah, it's very true. And it's very hard to do. Like I can think about times in my own life where like I made the safe choice, and I'm like, man, I kind of wish I would have taken a chance on myself. Yeah. I just check down, safety check down. No, but
I know.
You're
so much easier to make the safe choice.
It is. And there's a lot of like fear and anxiety that comes with like putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
And for him, not only was it like turning down the security of his current job, but it was like, he's going to go down to this Las Vegas invitational and like put on display his skills in front of like European coaches.
After
guys.
3 years of not playing, which is crazy.
Right.
It's wild.
He didn't really seem like it, but there must have been a lot of just like crazy head trash going on. I'd be like, oh man, am I really that good? Like, what am I doing here?
Probably helped that he had already played professionally for a lot of years.
That's true. And like, yeah, he knew what it would take. He knew how good he was.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, and people who are listening to this show who remember that game against Kentucky, his senior year at Princeton, and all these guys balled out, and they really should have won that game.
Balled out.
Yeah, that's sports lingo, babe.
Are people still saying that? I haven't heard that since the 90s.
I don't know. What are the kids saying? Going ham? Or am I already like 5 years late to that?
I have no idea. I'm not the person to ask.
I'll log into TikTok and see what's going on. But it was like evident when he was on the court, literally just as good, if not better than these guys.
Yeah, I remember when I met Kareem, what was it, like 9 years ago now? Like when we first started dating. It was at Bro J's, actually.
Shout out Bro J's.
And you were like, he's going to the NBA.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
No, because he was already, well,
I was like, probably he's so tall.
Yeah. And I was like, what can I tell this young lass to try and get her on another date? But so anyways, yeah, trust your instincts. That's a big one. It's also not easy to do. So kudos to Kareem. And if you're out there, if you're thinking about making a big jump, just do it. There's a reason you've been chewing on it. There's probably some credence to it.
Yeah.
something else someone told me once. If you are, I'm going to totally butcher what they told me, but the idea is like, if you are like nervous to do something.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm about to get real. It's probably because it's like a risk worth taking. Either it means something to you.
Yeah.
Or like the potential outcome of that, you know what I mean, is something that's worth attaining.
I like that. That's very wise.
Well, hey, I'm a wise guy.
You are a wise guy.
Number 2, wordplay. Number 2. So we good? We can wrap that one up?
Let's wrap it.
Wrapped. The importance of skill acquisition. Did you see that one coming?
No, I didn't.
Let me tell you where my head's at.
Okay.
So even though Kareem took these big like risks, right? It sounded like he was very conscious along the way of acquiring skill, right? And so for me, it was really kind of embodied when, even though he went back, and I believe he went, maybe he went Poland first and then the Netherlands, or maybe went Netherlands, Poland. I can't remember. It might've been Poland his second time around. Even though he went back to play professional basketball, like in the back of his mind, he was like very aware of the skills he'd built at the radio station. And he was very aware of like the skills he was acquiring while over there, even though his job was to play basketball. And it sounds like when he went to interview for this job at the time, Gimlet, which was like basically like his dream job, so to speak, right? He was able to effectively position like, look, these are all the skills I've acquired. Whereas like some person might be like, sorry, our son Cannon he's in her lap freaking out. He's having a ball. A lot of people be like, oh man, like I just missed out on like 2 to 3 years of experience. Like there's holes in my resume. But Kareem knew like, no, like I've acquired these skills. I have them. And I bring this really unique experience to the table.
Yeah.
And he used it to his advantage.
Yeah. Yeah. He definitely did.
He did. Thanks for the feedback.
Sorry.
So, no, but I do think this is important. And I think people are becoming more aware of this at large. But like acquiring the skill is like what you need to be paying attention to. Like the days of just like putting in your time somewhere and hoping that the experience and like time spent is what's going to get you moved ahead. Mm-hmm. That's no longer like what's kind of relevant.
Yeah.
Especially in the professional world.
Yeah.
Is that true for you as a mother?
Oh yeah, definitely.
No, they're stuck with us. All right, let's wrap that up. I didn't feel like there was great feedback on that one. You're not feeling that one.
But no, it was a good point.
Okay.
But you made the point.
All right, point made.
And I agreed with it.
Okay, point made. Last one. His story about 3-on-3 professional basketball. I loved that he had just like become comfortable with expecting the unexpected. Right?
Yeah.
What was your favorite story he told? Because I have one.
Oh, I like the one where they had to completely move. It started raining and they had to completely move locations. Like that's insane.
In
but I think
Moscow.
it's because it is like such a relatively new, not sport. What would you call it?
No, yeah, I think it is a sport because it's basketball, but it's like a completely different game.
Yeah. Well, so it's so new that it's just kind of like he's kind of at the forefront of it all and they're just ironing out the kinks.
It's crazy. Yeah. Well, and I love too, like this idea of like all these people who've flown from all over the world. Because I mean, literally, it's like there's maybe a couple teams from the US, there's teams from Eastern Europe, there's teams from Asia, there's teams, I believe, from like Latin America. I mean, everywhere.
Yeah.
All these guys come to Moscow to play in this big time 3-on-3 tournament.
Did he talk about winning the Pan Am Games?
Briefly. Yeah.
Okay.
I know, which is like just so funny, like the amount of like milestones that he's hit in the last year that we didn't even like, we just kind of breezed over that.
Yeah, he's very impressive.
But it's so cool that, you know, through all this travel, and I got the sense that like there's months in the year where it's just probably like way too much, even for a guy like him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he said at one point, like he loses track of days, time zones, where he is.
I bet.
Traveling that much.
It's wild that he can keep a normal job.
Yeah. Yeah. But I just love the idea of like all these guys are at this tournament and they just cancel at the last minute. And they're like, oh, well, we're just going to like go 20 minutes away to like a Russian high school.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Or whatever the equivalent is of high school over there.
High school.
I don't know what they call it. And I'm not going to make any Soviet jokes. So for all our Russian listeners. My favorite story was the one about him getting like thrown into the stands.
Yeah, that's
and
crazy.
No foul called.
That's so crazy.
Because I remember growing up, like you all had that like rival high school with the hometown refs and you never got any calls. I feel like it's just on another level when you're at like a 3-on-3 tournament in a hostile country. I can't even imagine like what that experience is like.
It's so wild.
It's so cool. So becoming comfortable with adversity. Change is the only constant. Let me see if I can come up with one more
And you know,
cliche.
there's a lot of fans for 3-on-3 basketball because I followed along on social media with Kareem and Dan when they were like on all these trips. And they have like people posing with them and
Oh yeah.
like a ton of fans.
Well, internationally, it's a lot bigger than it is in the States.
Yeah.
For sure. But the other thing too is I thought he actually was a really good kind of analogy. It's similar to like the rise of beach volleyball out of, you know, what would you call it? Traditional Olympic volleyball, like indoor volleyball. I think they just call it volleyball. But now it's like, that's a big deal. Like I might not get all geeked up for like the PBA championship, but like I'm very well aware of like beach volleyball and some of like the prominent players.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's probably just a matter of time. But I think to your point, on an international stage, it's already there in some respects.
Yeah.
I think the fact that it's now an Olympic sport is just
going to be so much bigger. Yeah.
Only going to legitimize it.
So cool.
So it's so cool. So those were my 3 key takeaways. You know what? The other thing he said?
What?
Just consistency.
Oh, yeah.
Just doing. Everyone keeps saying consistency. So I'm going to look into
that's the theme of our podcast.
I'm just going to change it to consistency with Ken and Sonia.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get some t-shirts made. I just got to figure out the copyright.
Okay.
But I thought it was good. I really hope people enjoyed that one as much as I do. Just for the story alone. Like,
yeah,
you know,
it's like a wild story.
So many chances to quit along the way. And now with the Olympics being postponed, that's just one more obstacle that I have no doubt he'll overcome. But very, very inspiring. Very inspiring. Mm-hmm. All right.
Who would have known he was into astrology?
Yeah, I know. I think that might be a spin-off podcast.
I actually did know because I helped him with his dating app or his dating profile once on one of those apps, and he had something on there about it.
Well, finally, we're getting to the meat. Okay, let's go with this. Talk to me.
I can't remember what it said, but I realized then he was into it. It's like, oh.
You know, I'm gonna.
He didn't take any of my feedback for his profile.
Yeah, I think he's got a good thing going. He's 6'8", handsome, plays for USA Basketball. He might not need our help, but I'm going to tread lightly here. There's a certain type of folk who gets into astrology.
What does that mean?
A peculiar person. Eccentric.
Are you calling Kareem peculiar?
Not peculiar. That's the wrong word. And that's the opposite of treading lightly.
Yeah.
But I will say, so I had an internship with a bunch of football buddies, and I worked in a call center. And needless to say, they were pretty long, uneventful days. So we would always start off the morning with our horoscopes. And over time, we were brazen enough that we would read out the horoscopes for basically the whole office. And what I found was there's a certain type of person who follows that stuff very closely.
Yeah, it's a huge thing. A lot of people do.
Right.
I'll read my horoscope from time to time.
What's it say? What are you?
I'm a Leo.
What's the characteristics of a Leo?
It's pretty accurate for me.
Okay, well that's good. That's good radio. The people at home are like, oh, good. It's accurate.
Leos are like strong-willed and fiery.
Oh.
And a little crazy.
Yeah, that sounds about spot on. I'm an Aquarius. And
sometimes I read yours and it never sounds anything like you.
Really?
I read mine and I'm like, yeah, that's me.
All I took from Aquarius was that it's
a little lame.
Sexy good time.
I've never thought that about your horoscopes. It's always like kind of lame.
I got to look into where I'm getting my horoscopes. Okay. Well, once again, this has gone off the rails. So thank you for joining me. I'm excited to do this again.
You too.
Let's
You're
wrap this up. We have a couple really good shows coming down the pike. Really good guests. I'm pumped. This was a good one.
Excited.
Yeah, we've got some big ones.
All of our guests are good guests.
They are, but I just, they've already, a couple of them already been recorded. The conversations are fantastic. So I'm really excited to get those released for folks.
Me too.
And I'm not going to say who's next because
we're unsure.
Coronavirus is throwing a wrench in everything. So it's making it a little difficult to plot these out. But nonetheless, let's wrap this up. And thanks for listening. And we'll see you again next week.
See ya.